Welcome to your training on how to conduct a successful reference interview. My name is Ariel Shirley, and I will be leading your training today. Your supervisor should have provided you with a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and links to the tutorial, so you'll need to complete. So if they haven't done so, please ask them to do this at this time. Until then, let's get started. So during this training, we will cover your learning objectives and goals, the steps to completing a successful reference interview, proper reference interview etiquette, tips for engaging patrons, asking probing questions, and understanding what a patron truly needs, and understanding when to pass along a reference question to a dedicated librarian. So some of you may be wondering what a reference interview is. It's a conversation between the library reference staff and the library patron for the purposes of clarifying the patron's needs and assisting the patron in meeting those needs. Patrons rarely tell you their specific need, so the reference interview is used to determine the patron's actual need. You've probably completed one of these in the past, but didn't know it. So this training is used so you know exactly what to do in the future. So let's start with a scenario. A student comes to the desk looking for a book for a psychology class. What questions would you ask to obtain more information? Is it a course textbook? Is it for research purposes? Does he need more than one book, like from a similar author? Does he know the title or the author? What information does he have on this book? And how much information will you need to provide during this reference interview? Also consider, is he familiar with the library catalog or the stack locations? What type of patron is he? Is he a student? Is he a professor? Is he a friend of the library? This affects his borrowing policies. And basically, how do you figure out what he actually needs in order to help him in a manageable amount of time? Is this going to take less than 5 minutes? Is it going to take 5 to 10 minutes? Or is it going to take more than 10 minutes? Where's the cutoff? When do you need to refer on? So after this training, you should be able to distinguish between basic reference questions and higher level reference questions, identify and recommend appropriate library resources to meet patron needs, summarize patron needs, questions, requests, and demonstrate understanding of the patron's needs, questions, and requests. Show patrons appropriate steps for gaining information and resources, and calculate whether the patron's needs can be satisfied by the learner or do they need to be referred on to a librarian. So you will have encountered and will continue to encounter the following patron question types. The first is directional. Where is the bathroom? Where is study room 101? Where is Sim? How do I get to the best library? Most of these are pretty easy. Next is instructional. How do I print something? How do I use the scanner? Those are pretty easy. Harder questions may be, how do I look up a periodical on the library website? Circulation, how to borrow. How many times can I renew Ohio Link books? How many books can I check out at one time? What's the difference between Ohio Link and ILL? What are the different policies? So some of these are easy, some of these can be harder. Next would be referral. Where is? I'm looking for a children's book. Where is the IMC? I'm looking for a physics book. Where's the best library? These are ones where you just, similar to directional, but it may involve more steps because you may need to help them locate where something is first instead of just pointing. And finally is informational. What is? What are your summer hours? Do you offer notary services? What kind of books do you have in your collection? Some of these are simple, some of these can be harder. As you can see, the reference interview will be used to narrow down just how difficult it will be to answer this patron's question. So what are the essential elements of conducting a successful reference interview? Well, first you have approachability. These should be fairly second nature. You want to be welcoming, friendly, you want to smile, you want to make eye contact. For those times when you have more than one patient at the desk, you want to acknowledge those who are waiting, either by finding someone to help you or by assuring them you will help them as soon as possible. Basically, just making it easier for them to feel more comfortable to ask you for help. You don't want to seem shut off, angry, or maybe just not interested in helping them. You want to make them feel comfortable with the library experience. So next, you want to engage interest. You want to focus your attention on the patron. You want to face them while they're speaking. You want to maintain eye contact. You want to nod. You want to make comments to make sure they know that you're listening. Again, second nature, but you need to keep this in mind that sometimes you may be busy, it may be a bad day, and you may not think to do these things. But you need to do this in order to help the reference interview go along in a smoother fashion. Next is engaging in listening and inquiring. Important first step is to let the patron finish their question before responding. You don't want to interrupt someone, and you don't want to jump to conclusions. Even if you think you know what the patron needs, let them finish asking you first, because it might appear rude. Next, you want to clarify the question in order to help you understand what they need and help them feel reassured that you're listening. So you want to say, so you're looking for your psychology textbook for Psych 231. Is that correct? Things like that. You want to ask open-ended, probing questions to encourage your patron to provide further information. So say his first statement wasn't fulfilling enough, you didn't get enough information, you want to ask questions in order to get him to provide you more information. We'll cover that in the next slide. And also you want to verify your understanding of their need before starting a search. Like I said, you want to clarify what they're asking. Next, you want to search. So you want to find out what the patron already tried. So if they have a printer error, ask them what steps they followed when printing, to see if maybe they skipped something. You want to just see where they are in their timeline. Next, you want to see what is their time frame. Are they looking for a book for an assignment that's due tomorrow and it's on OhioLink? If not, you won't be able to help them. Or is it something that's due in a later time frame? How much time do you have to help them? And also, very important, show them how you're looking, finding information, fixing something so that they can do it in the future. Finally is follow-up. Ask the patron whether the question has been answered completely, and if not, determine whether they need to be referred onto a reference librarian. So this is a very important step, because if you have not helped them and you cannot figure out what to do, this is when you refer on. And next, you want to encourage them to return if further assistance is needed. You want them to feel comfortable with coming back. You don't want to scare someone away from using our library resources, okay? So next, like I said, let's cover probing open-ended questions. These are all important aspects of the reference interview in order to really help you and the patron find what they really need. So for probing open-ended questions, these are questions that are used to clarify the need or the request and to guide the patron towards a more accurate portrayal of their question. An example would be, can you tell me more about the topic? How much information do you need? These are questions that cannot be answered with yes or no. These are questions that need longer answers, okay? And also important is to let the patrons tell you what you need. Do not assume their needs. Like I said earlier, don't interrupt and don't assume. So next would be paraphrasing the question or clarifying the question, as I mentioned earlier. So when you think you're close to solving the problem, you want to try and summarize or paraphrase the question back to them. So like I said, you want to say, so you're looking for articles related to juvenile diabetes and school-based nutritional programs. When you ask something like this, they'll either say, right, yeah, that's correct, or they'll say, well, that's not exactly what I'm looking for. And then they'll hopefully tell you more about what they need. So this reassures the patient that you've been listening and you heard them correctly. And if you somehow gotten it wrong, this gives the patient a chance to correct you. And then finally, those follow-up questions when you're at the end of the reference interview, these are very important. So this is when you completed the search. You take time to ask follow-up questions to make sure the patient's need is completely satisfied. Asking, do you have everything you need? Did I help you today? If you're unable to help them completely or it's taking longer than expected, like longer than 10 minutes, this is when you would refer them on to a reference librarian. Remember, don't just say no. If you don't know the answer or you just cannot think of a way to help them at this time, don't just say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Find someone who can help them further up the ladder. So now we're going to start our practice tutorial. So like I said, you should have a copy of the PowerPoint opened up on your personal computer with this link. So please go here and complete this quick tutorial and quiz. This should help you get a better grasp of where you are in the reference interview process. So I'll give you a minute. All right, so after completing the tutorial, think about the questions that were offered. Which seemed more appropriate for the situation at hand? Were you able to easily guess or intuit which questions would be better for helping your patron provide more information? Also, think about our own reference textbooks. What would you do if the textbook was located at one of our branch libraries? Or what would you do if we didn't offer that textbook? What kind of options could you give the patron? And also, what other questions could you ask in this scenario to make sure their needs were satisfied? Remember, in all forms of reference and circulation, the success of the transaction is measured not just by the information conveyed, but also the positive or negative impact of the patron-staff member interaction. So remember to be friendly, attentive, and approachable. Don't be shut off. Don't be angry. Don't be inattentive. Use what you learned from the tutorial in future interactions with patrons at the desk. And remember to be patient and understanding. Many of our users are new students or older patrons, so they may need extra help in locating an item, printing a document, or navigating the catalog. So now let's complete one final tutorial for further practice. Extra practice is always good in these types of situations because you never know what kind of questions, or issues you might come up with at the desk. So please complete this tutorial. And remember the elements of a successful reference interview: approachability, interest, listening and inquiring, searching, and follow-up. These elements will help you with your patron needs. They will help you be a better reference staff. And know that if you're stuck or you can't find the answer, then you can ask for help or refer the patron onto someone more knowledgeable. Don't just say no and don't get flustered. There are people in our library system who can help you. And know that you will encounter questions beyond those mentioned during today's training. That's okay. Patrons will have a variety of questions, requests, and needs. Just be patient and do what you can to assist. And just know that the act of listening can brighten a person's day. Someone may be having a bad day, and just being there and being friendly and approachable can really help someone and make them feel more comfortable in the library. That's what we want. We want people to feel comfortable here, okay? And so finally, I'd like you to think of these questions. Later on, we'll be doing an in-person role-playing session, and you'll be covering these reference questions and taking turns as a patron and as a reference staff. So think of ways on how you would answer these questions. We will be reviewing these during the in-person review session at a later date. Remember to use the skills that you learned from this training in the tutorial practices. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask your supervisor or any of the higher level library staff. All right. Thank you. I hope that you learned a lot today.